Welcome to the Unsidelined Life, the podcast that challenges and encourages women to stop denying themselves a full life and to step boldly into the opportunities God is preparing for you. Join me for raw insights and engaging conversations to guide your journey of self-discovery and pursue the life that God created for you. Welcome to another edition of this Unsidelined Life. This is Eileen Noyes, your host or hostess. I don't even know. Host, because hostess sounds like her restaurant person. So I am here today with a dear, I don't want to say old because she's obviously beautiful and young, but an old friend of mine through our experience of our spouses, ex-spouses playing on the Packers together. So I just want to have her introduce herself because I don't like to talk too much, but she's a dear friend. I love, I don't even know how long it's been, but this podcast is actually my way of kind of having a reunion with people that it's been decades, I think, right? At least a decade. So Erin, if you want to just introduce yourself, your family, and really like the association with the Packers, if you don't mind.
I think it's been 16 years, Eileen. Yes, when we met, so it's been about 16 years. So I'm Erin Krause. So my ex played with Eileen's ex on the Packers. I have 4 beautiful boys. And so we were only with the Packers for 1 year. It was an amazing experience. The Packers are probably by far the best organization that I got to experience while being in the NFL life. So yes.
So what are your boys' ages?
They are 15. Well, they're getting ready to turn. So it'll be 16, 14, 12, and 8. So 4 boys.
Awesome. Okay. So I didn't realize this. And this is us, looking back, like you said, if we're talking 15, 16 years, something like that, it's a long time. So you said 1 year with the Packers, and then did you say 5 years in the NFL?
Yep. He did 5 years in the NFL. Yes.
Okay, where else were you so that you can make that comparison? Because I can't make any comparison to any other team.
He was drafted to the Chargers, so that's where I met him, was in San Diego. So I lived in San Diego and he was playing for the Chargers. And then he was traded. So we did Cleveland, Ohio, and then he retired from the Packers. And then he did a stint or preseason, I think, with the Texans. I did not move to Houston at that time. I was pregnant, so I was at home focusing on that at that point.
Do you remember, because it's obviously different, how did we meet?
I think that my ex met they started bonding in the locker room, and I think your ex was doing a Bible study because at that time he was really focused with Christianity. So I think he was talking to my ex about Jesus in the locker room, and then he met me and he thought that we looked alike and that we would get along. And so that's when I introduced us. He thought I was Polynesian or something. And so that's what I remember about coming here.
That's crazy. And okay, see, I feel so bad because I don't have the best memory when it comes to that. But I love every time I've asked someone to, I don't want to say be on the show, because I would say that when I first decided to talk to these women, I didn't even know I was going to do a podcast. I would say that you might be the first or second after I knew this was a podcast. And so this is where I have to intro and do all these things. So it's just a little interesting because I feel like, I don't want to say it's a little more nerve-wracking, but it kind of is like, hey, this is not just a conversation with us two. So I hope, and we actually prayed before this, and we were talking about the different concerns that we had. So I like to be open about all this stuff, but we talked about the different concerns about how we talk, because obviously we're both ex-wives of, professional athletes. So as I think about all the different women that I ask to be on this show, there's always a different theme that literally when I message or leave a text, it's like, hey, would you be open to having a conversation with me? And then my brain starts recalling the different things, it's like, oh my gosh, this is how I experienced this person. This is the relationship dynamics. And so with you, when I think back into our time together, one, you're a very strong, like, Christian. You're very strong, like, I don't want to say outspoken, but you are very grounded in your faith. I remember you talking about your dad. I think I met your dad. I think I met your parents. I think I met your brother. So I just know like that was like a foundational thing with us. And so as much as I don't remember certain conversations, I just knew like, okay, like we for sure had like that like tight connection.
We did Bible study together. I did a lot of the boxes with you. My family went to your house. Your ex really wanted to meet my family because of me growing up from birth Christian, and him understanding, because he could be extreme and he just wanted to understand, like, because he obviously wasn't raised as a baby as a Christian, and he really wanted to understand all of that to like a fine tooth comb. But yes, no, I actually have Zane. So my son is Zane with an X, and I named him after your brother because I fell in love with your brother's name when I lived there.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's crazy. Yeah, the X is, I think the X is definitely a lot more creative than that. I'm gonna have to tell my brother that. Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. I think I only know 3 Zanes, 2 are Z's, but yours is the X. Wow.
Yeah. All of my exes, they all have X's in their name.
Okay, so what time frame was this? Are we looking at like
2007, 8.
okay, 2000 and then okay, so okay, tell me again. So after you guys got done, where did you end up going?
When he retired from the NFL, he was drafted about 18 hours shy of his degree. And so at that point, in about 2008-9, the economy tanked and the housing market wasn't good, and he needed to finish his degree. So where I grew up, there wasn't a lot of, I would say, a lot of options for family, for school, sports. It's very royal and it's great, but I just wanted to have more opportunities for my children. And so at that point, after like living in San Diego and things like that, I was like, let's, try Omaha so that we can finish your degree and, be near one set of grandparents.
Okay.
And so, at that point, I was about 7 months pregnant with my first Zane. And so that's how we transitioned and decided to move to Omaha.
Okay, so your kids started after you guys were done.
Well, I was pregnant while it was ending.
How did you guys meet?
When in San Diego, I had a job, and then I had another job because San Diego is so expensive, as you know. And so I worked at a bar on Friday and Saturday nights as just the, like, I don't even know, cashier or girl you paid to get in, the cover girl.
And then, so you said he was on the Chargers for a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, he was drafted with the Chargers. Yeah, he played there for 3 years.
So how was that? Okay, well, because you just said it, you talked about the difference and the contrast of like the Packers versus the other teams. Like, especially as a wife or a girlfriend, I don't know if you guys were like married at the time. When did you get married actually? Was it before? Were you guys boyfriend girlfriend before?
We eloped. We got married while he was for the Packers. So we eloped.
I think I remember that. Okay. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about this because so you talk about a contrast. Like contrast how? Like let's talk about places like the Chargers. So obviously sunny versus cold. And then I want to go into the relationship aspect of things, of why you said that the Packers is a great organization.
I knew a lot of Chargers that came through the bar scene in San Diego, and let's just say that they were pretty wild. There was a lot of things at your fingertips when you live in San Diego, and when you move to Green Bay, you don't have the nightlife, you don't have all opportunities that you do in San Diego. And so the organization just seemed to be much more grounded. Very, like, I still am friends with several people that, helped get you established in Green Bay with, the HR aspect, housing. They were just very accommodating in Green Bay, almost like a family oriented welcome team. San Diego was just kind of more like you fend for yourself type. That was my feeling. But again, you know, so
Well, gosh, they're not even in San Diego anymore. And I would have to say that being on the Packers for a long period of time, how we remember it started. So this is 2001, 2008, when we finished, I would say that it changed. I'm sure it's still one of the great teams and, like as a whole, but I felt it more business-like. I felt there's two things of that when you're the man and they treat you, the organization treats you well. And then as you do transition out and it's kind of like, the fresh meat comes in, the new guys come in, then for sure there's that transition of out with the old and with the new. So there's definitely that feeling, but there's also I think that's when the building changed. That's when different things had changed so that it wasn't as personable. I think at one point, I remember when I got there, the staff, just like the mail person, the staff, it was the same building. And then, or you like all the Packers, all the players had to go through, and it was, I don't know if you were, no, you weren't there for it, but you were able to just go through and like all the players saw all the staff. Versus the second building, the atrium, and where they are now, it's separated and it's like, so there's two separate places. So it's like you got the staff and then you got the coaches and the players. So it seemed like less personable. So, okay. So then with you again, like, how was your experience with the other women? If you don't mind going there.
when I was with the Chargers, or my ex was with the Chargers, none of them that he hung out had wives. I mean, they were, newly drafted, and lots of the guys had girlfriends or breaking up with girlfriends, or I would see them interact with women they shouldn't when they had relationships at the bar. And so, yeah, but when I was with the Packers, a lot of those women were married and grounded. And we did the Bible study with several of those women. And, I think it was, you did Bible with like the Drivers, the Hawks, the Coles. And so they all awesome. I mean, I still keep up with some of them on Facebook and see their beautiful families, and their marriages seem to be doing amazing. And that's absolutely gorgeous for them. So kudos to them.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So what were, because then you're talking about a short stint, like what were your highlights? Because I know for sure, like, especially, you're so in terms of football, that was like for you guys, it was on the shorter side, which on the average, I mean, gosh, they say 2 to 3 years is the norm. And so anything above the 2 to 3 year mark is actually a longer,
Yeah.
career for a football player. So what would you say were like your biggest highlights in it? And then we'll go into the lows, which for you and I think more of our relationship and more of our parallels and commonalities come after football. So like what were your highlights?
I mean, it was just a lot of fun. It was, you're kind of on a high. You are treated like, rock stars, and you get away with getting in places or getting moved to the front of the line, and you get free things, and you get accustomed to feeling important and relevant instead of just, 20 years old and working 2 to 3 jobs and establishing or trying to figure out who you are at that age. And so I would say everybody, and if they didn't feel this way, they're lying, because you just feel relevant. And you go places and they ask for your husband or your significant other's signature, and so that's a whole different level of high, and people want to ride that. And I would say yes, if you make it past 3 years, it's crazy. I think in any NFL player's mind, they want 3 years for the pension, and then they want a 10-year pension. So their first goal is to get 3 years. The next goal is the 10-year. And so, and I totally get that. So I would just say the entire experience is just phenomenal. At least my short experience of that was that, because everybody in Green Bay was amazing. I knew a lot of players, again, for the Chargers individually. And, you just get treated like a rock star.
So you talked about, because it's interesting, like how different, we're all different. And so like some people don't like that at all. I know, I remember my first experience. I went to dinner with my ex and another couple, and people were coming up to us and, obviously asking for autographs. And I just saw this woman like seething. And so every time another kid would come up to her husband, it was like, it was like the uncomfortable feeling of, oh my gosh, like you do not like this. And I remember actually thinking, I have a choice here. I don't want to be her. Like, I mean, I get it. Like you can always say no. And so it's not like the responsibility of a player to, always do autographs and things like that. But I just think that there's a way of handling it. And so I just remember she was just so irritated, irritable. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're totally making all this thing very uncomfortable. So I made a conscious decision to go, I don't have to get irritated. And so like you just said, and you were probably in a different like place. Cause I think, I'm not sure. No, I don't think they had kids yet, but like, yeah, you said you get treated like rock stars. Did that bug you at all when people are asking for autographs? How, because you guys are younger, like how did you see girls like noticing your husband? Like how did you handle all that?
I would say that it didn't bother me, because how many times as a child when you're playing with Barbie that you think, oh my gosh, look at Rockstar Barbie that you got when you were 8 years. I would say like what is it, like 1% to make it to like the NFL or something. And so I would say if you're treating people, I think that, in my opinion, you want to treat people the way you'd have them treat you. So you work this hard to get there, then love your neighbor, period. Like you're in an and you're not above them. So to act like they're annoying, or they're inconvenienced by them, I don't think anybody should ever act better than somebody else. So it did not bother me. I had a few times when a girl like wanted to rip her boob out for, him to sign. And then I was like, okay, that's not like nice boob. We're not signing those.
Nice boobs.
That really it did. Okay, I'm not crazy. But no, bother me at all. And especially if it's like kids, that to me is beautiful, because you need someone to look up to, and hopefully, and what you're seeing is a lot of athletes right now on fire for Jesus. Like, I mean, it's beautiful. So I would say enjoy it while it lasts, because it can be taken from you tomorrow.
I don't know if you were or are listening to, it's that Spiraled podcast. So Spiraled is has to do with the 3 guys that joined the cult that my ex did. So Spiraled is like, so after all that happened with me and my ex, there was a Sports Illustrated article. So it was like a 3-day article. So the reporter is Kaylin Kaler. And so she did that article. Then after that, she did a podcast. And so this podcast, like this time, so the interview, the article, she actually came to me and asked if I was open to doing an interview. And I was like, it's too early. I don't want to yet. I said, I won't give you any information, but I am willing to be open with or like, if you tell me what then I can confirm if it's accurate. And it was little things like, okay, that's not my daughter's name. No, we weren't brought up Catholic, like different things like that. And so those are this is where we just kind of started a relationship. And so that was in 2019, 2020. Then she started doing the podcast. So I was like, okay, well, things are out. I'm open to talking. And so I was a part of that. And there were other girls that, whose husbands, ex-husbands joined this podcast. Like the first one, they promoted, I was talking about and crying about being put in a situation where I'm making decisions I never thought I had to make. And so it was pretty intense because we're talking about like my whole escape plan and things. And so I had no idea where this whole podcast series was going, because it's 6 episodes and I think they have 2 bonus ones. But every time I listen to this, it's like it's so beyond just like my situation. And so just to talk about these guys, why they're drawn to this, what would be appealing about a cult, why they're even, just the struggle out of NFL living. And so it's just been amazing. So I think that you should like just take a listen, just out of curiosity, just to see or hear the like why this happens. And so like going back to you and I, well, okay, so we talked about the highs. Like what lows in regards to NFL pertaining to, specifically NFL stuff, what were the lows? And then we'll go into life after football.
The lows, I mean, at that point, I felt like my identity was in my husband at the time, because you're getting uprooted and moving, and you don't really, the life isn't revolved around you necessarily and your needs and wants. You're just revolved around it. Is he playing? Which team is he playing for? So, at that end, it was just watching him not be, well, he was actually hurt and could not perform like he needed to when he had the last 2 tryouts. He had hurt his ankle because he had bone spurs, cyst, plantar fasciitis, things going on with his feet. His feet were killing him. And so therefore, I would just say watching this huge man that would just, have a lot of self-doubt, that you would have to just reassure, fluff, and fix, and talk love to them and try to solve everything for them. I would say watching them fall apart would be the moving around.
Wow. You, sometimes I think it's like I'm so far removed, and these conversations, like it's like you're bringing back memories. Because you're right. It's like it's, in a sense, it's a death, right, of their careers, of their livelihood, but life literally keeps going after that. And so as they're grieving or trying to grieve, like we have to keep going. And it's like, okay, the kids still have to get to school, we still have to move, we still have to get things together. So wow, like you've just reminded me of the things that people don't think about is that life continues to go, and that you have to be the one to be strong when, of course, when they're in those like dark times. It's understandable, like wow, like you have to be the strong one. So just that, I think of that scripture, and one is down, like that the 3-cord strand, and when one is down, the other one will pick them up. And so that is a lot of the role of a wife when she's married to professional athlete. And I'm sure in other, for sure other areas, but for sure I'm just thinking about what you just said. So obviously you're in a different place, and so let me just kind of give like a couple of reasons why I think about you. One, we're friends. One, I told you, I've always thought like, dude, she's hot, you're always made up, you're super beautiful, like you're in shape after every kid and all these things. And so like Facebook is the connector, or the way that you just kind of keep in touch with someone. And so I don't remember the time frame, but I know that I thought, okay, cool, she's like every kid, it's like, oh, there she goes, she's gonna have another one. And then I don't remember the time frame, but I just remember talking, and things weren't so good with you and your ex, still married. So just let's talk about that.
So when I moved to Omaha, Nebraska, I didn't know anyone. And being pregnant and not a partier or not really. I don't know. When I was pregnant, I did not really try to find a group. It was just kind of like I didn't have a group. I didn't have anybody. I was in Omaha alone. My whole family's on the East Coast from Ohio to Florida. And so I just didn't have a foundation. I just remember when I left Green Bay, I really connected with you and your love for Jesus. And I was going through it. So I remember calling you and talking to you about everything. I even talked to your ex and told him what was going on and trying to get advice to what to do because he played in the NFL also. And it was funny because, at that point I was calling you. And then I think 2 or 3 years later, you're calling me. And I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all falling apart. It's awesome. But yeah, so I just reached out to you at that point because I did not have a foundation here. It was myself alone.
Not fun. And you said you had one at the time. What was going on? Do you think it was a lot of like the depression of football not working out? Was it, if you're okay to be open about this, was it being what's the word? Well, was he cheating? Was he what was going on?
I think when we're young, we get caught up in so many things. And so I saw red flags with Ryan or my ex when I lived in San Diego. And, God says, don't, marry unequally yoked. And we just think that we can fix people and we can rescue people and we can love them enough that we see has potential because they have potential and you see it in little glimpses. But in reality, they show you who they are. And so I saw the red flags and he lied to me. So when we started dating, he was on the NFL probation. And it's also why he got cut from the Chargers because at that time, it was like the whole Michael Vick issue. And so anybody that did anything, they were cut. His first year, I think, for smoking pot. And put him on probation, which I think now the NFL even lets you smoke pot. I don't know, but I think I heard that. I don't know if I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So he got in trouble the first year and they put him on probation. So they would do the whole P testing and everything. And I had asked him when we started dating because I have never smoked pot in my life. I've never been around drugs. I love chocolate. So there's my drug. And so I just asked him, I said, do you have any desire? And he's like, no, I haven't smoked weed for 2 years. I have no desire to do that. And I thought, okay, well, he's telling the truth, in my lovely, naive brain. And so he did drink. A lot of the guys would drink after they won games. They would go to the nightclubs on Sunday nights or whatever it was, and they would just, party and celebrate. And it seemed normal. I had never been around addiction. I didn't know the signs, didn't know what any of it entailed. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it was just him being 25 years old and drinking with the rest of the team.
Right.
And so when he retired, I was pregnant with my first at about 8 months pregnant, and me being gullible and naive and just, I was
believing for the best. I mean, really,
I was raised simple, and it was great because no one could lie to you. You knew their entire fifth generation all the way back because it was small town. So like, I never really had to probe or question or not really trust. And so I went to wash his sweatpants, and I was 8 months pregnant, and we were in an apartment at this point because we didn't know he was still trying out for like the Buffalo Bills, and they had wanted him, but he hurt his foot. And so I found weed in his pants. And it was like at that point, because I had never been around drugs and I was pregnant with his first, it was like someone shot me in my chest. And to me previously, because I would be like, oh my gosh, what is that smell? And he would say like, someone ran over a skunk near our apartment. And I would believe it because that's how naive I was about being around drugs. And so we got in a huge fight. I was ready to like leave because I'm like, I'm not raising somebody that is a pothead. Like I just did not want that around my family, nothing. And he looked at me and he's like, Erin, I'm in pain for my foot or whatever, and it helps my pain. And it's not like Zane's 15. Well, Zane turned 15 and he's still smoking pot like a pothead. So, you know,
Wow.
yeah.
That's a whole, oh, that's just, it's interesting that we're talking about this little part, this drug thing, because I know someone who I was actually I asked him because I knew him from college. He is very much an advocate for for I don't even cannabis, I guess is would be the more medical thing. And I mean, I'm sure I have no stance. I don't know. I'm sure, and just based off what he's saying, it's like, yeah, like they're obviously God created all these things for medical purposes. And so I'm sure there's definitely benefits, but then of course there's the going overboard, there's the not medical parts of it. And so this is the contrast that you're talking about, because okay, he's saying that it's helped his pain, but just like you said, 15 years later, like, okay, well, what is this pertaining to? And so again, like I look at us, I look at you, and I think, I thought like we're kind of going back and forth in our stories. And so I think I remember that you were struggling, and then I thought things were good. And then you find out I'm struggling. And I think at that time, I think you were still together. Cause I just remember thinking, oh wait, oh good, like things are working out. There's another woman who came to me from the Packers, and I don't remember the time frame of how bad things are with me, but she was saying, I'm done. Like, I don't want to be in this relationship and all these things. And it must have been that she felt that she could talk to me because of what I was going through. I felt like at some point it was like, oh, Eileen's an advocate for divorce. Like that's like, or she endorses divorce. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so not the reputation I want. But I had to challenge her and say, you know what, like, no, you don't have grounds for a divorce. Like you guys like can work it out. Like he needs mentorship. He needs this, but this is not like, you're not like, I don't see like you trying to quit is going to be the answer. And they're still, so they push through. And I think from what I can tell, things are good. And so anyway, so as I'm getting back to you, like, I just think, so we're talking at least almost 20 years, right? And so,
Yes, 18 years. 18 years of me fighting basically for a marriage because I love Jesus and I grew up where you can get through anything. Don't quit on your marriage. Just pray for him, do everything. But what I realized, because I'm not an advocate for divorce, but I grew up, if you're not equally yoked and the one that's not saved doesn't want to leave, you shouldn't leave either. And I
mhm,
think there's so many things that people get confused because God didn't bring our marriage together. That was Satan.
mhm,
And God would have never have put me in. And so when people are like, I don't believe in divorce, all these things, I think they just get confused because it wasn't God that brought us together. Like God wanted me to marry someone that was equally yoked with me, but in the flesh, I saw tall, dark, and handsome. Even
mhm.
8 million red flags, like you see the skits, like I just need a giant red flag. You know what I mean? It was just so many things. Like I even had like a panic attack the day I was eloping to him. I had a full blown panic attack, and it was almost like God saying, do not do this, child. I do not want this for you, but I did it. And so
Wow, 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 wow.
I just was like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And you know, I can say you reap what you sow. I don't regret it because I do have 4 gorgeous children, but what I've endured, I would not wish upon anybody. And I did, I loved him more than life, and I sacrificed every ounce of my worth and gave it all to him. And so at that point, but the thing is too, is he's an addict, full blown addict, and then he's a narcissist. And I didn't understand narcissism because you don't have a class that's like when you go to psychology and stuff in college, they don't talk about narcissism. And so many people are actually talking about narcissism today and they want to use it left and right.
Right.
But narcissism, everybody has narcissistic tendencies, but a
Yes.
true narcissist has no remorse, no, they're not empathetic, they're void. You almost see black in their
Mm.
eyes. they're doing the things they do to you and they don't care how much they hurt you. And so that actually trapped me for 18 years because I would say to myself, I know he's bad to me. I know he's bad. Why can't I leave? And I didn't realize the trauma bond that he had over me, or he held my self-worth in his hands. And until I understood, I guess people like to say the mind effery or screwery that they do to you, until I understood what was being done to me. And when it started, even when we started dating, the clarity is there. And the madder I get at myself for not loving myself or seeing the things that were being done to me, because he took advantage of how forgiving and how much I love Jesus, and he just stepped on it.
I'm a little bit like speechless as I hear this. And I thank you so much for your vulnerability. Like, especially, so we're talking, like I said, we haven't talked in a long time. And so all you see is like Facebook. You see, I remember seeing pictures of you with the kids and then pictures of you with your ex. And so just that hope, like, oh my gosh, like, good, they're working it out. And so, like, so when did you make that decision, like, finally? Because I thought even within the last couple of years, I thought you were working things out.
So that just plays into loving Jesus and forgiving. I needed to feel like I did everything under the moon and stars to save my
Yes.
marriage,
Yeah.
which is more than most people. Most people do the boy and girl and they're done. And so, and doing four is a lot. And then doing four single is insanity. But in 2023, his verbal abuse to the children and to I used to get all the verbal abuse, but in 2023, he had taken a new job, and he hated the job. He hated his life. And then my kids were being the punching bag. And I thought, I'm not doing this. Like, you can make me the punching bag, but you picking my children apart, I'm not doing it. And so I planned, like, basically my escape plan next month, last October. So October of 23. And so, but we divorced in 2019. I divorced in 2019 because it was just, again, it's the narcissistic pattern. It's a trauma bond. Like, you just cannot break free from it. And people that have not experienced it don't know where I'm coming from. A lot of people will, you watch like the Stockholm syndrome, where a man can kidnap a woman and she'll miss the kidnapper. It's the same thing with narcissistic abuse. You just don't understand what's being done to you till you have like a aha moment, and then you're done. It could be just whatever it is, and you're done. Cold turkey, I'm done. But again, I've been out here by myself in Omaha for 15 years, and my family's still on the East Coast. And so I set up a plan to remove my children and myself out of that situation. But I knew that when I was pregnant with Zay 15 years ago, I said, I'm going to end up getting a divorce someday because he's going to do drugs and I'm going to be a single mom. And so I started working 15 years ago. And by the grace of God, 7 years ago, I was given, maybe 8 years ago, a great opportunity. And so I have been able to maintain a great lifestyle for my children and myself, because with NFL or elite players, once they get out of an elite sport, unless they are a tenured player, become commentators, have a very like great foundation with Jesus, it seems like they fall apart. And women that are married to them, and not all of them, and I wouldn't wish this upon any of them, but it's just what you hear, like every guy's bankrupt, every massive player has no money. It's just the women become the men. And it's sad because I literally have been the man in the marriage since he got out of the NFL, like applying for jobs for him, doing his resume, getting jobs for him. I mean, it's been
Oh my gosh, sorry. Go. Like, this is so, this is such a this is reality. And
oh,
like you're talking about it, I just think the way that you said it, you become the man.
I became the man, and I never wanted it because I was raised where, and I still like want a man to be a man. Like, I hope today, one day, that I find a husband that's normal, that's not an addict, that is the leader, because I never wanted to be the leader. But if you put me in a corner, I'm going to be the leader. I have 4 sons to take care of and to protect. And this was the cards that were dealt to me. Now, I chose these cards
Mhm.
because I ignored the red flags. And I would tell any girl that's young, don't ignore the red flags. Don't do it, because God has so much better for you. But I wouldn't change it, because I couldn't imagine not having my kids. But my life has been so hard,
Yeah.
so hard, exhausting. It's been, my body has been in fight or flight for 15 years. And it actually causes, when you're with a narcissist, it causes brain damage. So, like, short-term memory and things, I have, like, my mom will be like, do you remember when Zane was doing this? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that, because I was fighting or fighting for my life at that point,
Yeah.
because I was drowning. And so,
Mhm.
no, but like with the whole narcissism, when women turn into the maid, the simple things like they need to call the sprinklers to have them turned off, or they need to call the HVAC, or they need to do the things around the house. That's a man. To me, a man should be doing those things. But when I become a personal secretary, a maid, doing your resumes, it's exhausting.
Yeah, for sure. You know, like, so a couple things I wanted to address is you talked about being the punching bag. Like I didn't, so okay, so people are listening into a conversation like that we've not had in these, I don't know, almost 2 decades, right? So it's literally text here and there to catch up. And I did not know I didn't know what was going on with you. And so when I hear you say, yeah, like I've endured, like we're tough enough, because this is where I feel the parallels. It's like, you know what? I'll stay in this marriage. I've acknowledged, and it is what it is, and it's not what I was hoping for. And I'll endure, and I'll take the crap, and I will be in a loveless marriage. And but then when it shifts, and when the kids are the ones that are enduring the abuse, for sure, that was the same thing with me. Like I just remember thinking, and I actually this was where there was a shift. And the whole narcissistic thing, I remember when I had that conversation with him, because I was being told I was, rebellious and not submissive and all those things. And I specifically remember saying, you know, God made me. He knows me. He created me. He sees me on the daily. So if what you say does not fall in line with what he says, I will not receive it. And because I had finally gotten to the place of like standing my ground, that's where it was like, oh, and it's, I look at it as, for sure, it's like it's the devil using our spouse, using our exes to go, okay, the abuse she's not enduring, or she doesn't care about, like I can't penetrate her anymore, I can't hurt her anymore. Okay, now we have to go through the kids, and Satan's always going to want to do that, and because he's trying to jack up a marriage so that the kids are affected in that way. But when I knew that I was standing my ground, then it was like, it was for sure shifted to more of the focus on the kids. And like you said, it's like, okay, like we can't do this anymore. So, man, like I did not know it was going to go here. And so you're opening up conversations that people don't even talk about. And the fact that you're also taking responsibility. Like one of the questions that you pretty much answered was, what, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently? And you said it, like one of them. If you don't mind, if there's another answer to the question, but you definitely said, girls, young girls, like don't ignore the red flags. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that question.
If they come in like a white horse, they're probably a narcissist, because he like just promised the world and he did it in the first year. And then it's like, as soon as I put a ring on my finger, I was a prisoner. It was like, I'm going to torture her and she's just going to forgive me. And I did. So the only thing I would say is I should have left 10 years ago, after my fourth was born, is when I should have left. But, or I'm sorry, can't do math. He's 7. I should have left 7 years ago, because, but what is it, like Selena? Not that I'm like a Justin Bieber and Selena, but she said, that song, like I needed to lose myself to love. I needed to lose you to love me, or something.
Right.
Like, I needed to love myself enough. And I would say that it took that long for me to fall in love with myself. But narcissism, I mean, I don't know, like if you look into like Lucifer was a narcissist with God when he kicked him out of heaven. It's the Luciferian or Jezebel spirit. And so, like, you know, people talk about like the spirits on earth and the demons. Like a Jezebel spirit is the narcissistic spirit, and they go after Christians and they go after empaths because it's a war. And like I felt a war for 18 years, and the peace that I have felt since he has been gone, and the it was like God can't bless you with a demon near you, like he can't. And when that was removed, it has been so quiet, so peaceful, and I'm healing is all I can say. It's the healing process of, but with the narcissism they have, you have it's like cognitive dissonance or something where you're always questioning yourself and if you're a good guy, if you're a bad guy, if you're a villain. And I would say that's the part that I'm going through at this point, because when you release your narcissist, it's like releasing your child.
Mm-hmm.
He was 4 children combined, but it was like you did everything for them. Like you have to free them and let them go. And it's the hardest thing to do because it's not like you're losing your husband. You're
Mm-hmm.
losing a grown child that you've
Wow.
lived taking care of for 15 years.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, it is crazy. It is crazy, but so many people don't realize what's going on. And young girls, I just feel bad for because so many of them see these gorgeous young athletes, and unless they know Jesus, run. And I'm not talking like fake Jesus. I'm talking like real Jesus because I've met a lot of NFL players that love Jesus and women at the same time. So ignore the red flags. Like God's showing you red flags. That's the scary thing is, you know.
How are your boys doing?
Well, that's a sad topic because their dad, like it's crazy. It seems like the only thing that he really cares about is working out and himself and money to buy the narcotics or to work out to look good. It's just like you might have a 6 to 10 pack joke, but there's nothing in there anymore because you can't have a normal conversation with the narcissist. They can't be held accountable. They can't self-reflect. Everything is deflect. It's you, it's them, it's whatever. And so when he was here, he was not present. Like he would basically, and I've seen where a lot of NFL players become like distant from their families or they turn into like a recluse or they just want to be alone. And he would want to just watch every imaginable sport on his phone, on the TV, and then smoke pot either in the garage or on the back porch where there's TVs and wouldn't spend a time. I mean, my kids are in 3 sports each. He's never been a coach. He's never done hardly any athletic sport with them, as in showing them throwing ball. If so, it was with my oldest the first 2 to 3 years, and then it went bye bye. And it's like as the children get older with the narcissists and they can hold them accountable or check them or run their mouth back to them when they're getting put down, they don't want anything to do with them because they don't like being held accountable. They don't like self-reflection. And if you're going to hold them accountable, then like they don't want anything to do with you. So when he was here, he wasn't here. So his absence, his body was here, but that's it. Like he, you know, so many times my children would come up to me and say, you know, Mom, I wish I had a normal dad. I wish my dad would go hit baseballs with me. I wish my dad would go throw footballs with me. Why does dad love drugs so much? You know, and they would get in and out of vehicles and they would be embarrassed and they would say, do you think that I smell like pot right now? And he didn't care. He didn't care if he embarrassed them. He didn't care if he spent time with them. All he cared about is himself. And so I would say that it's very sad, but they don't notice that he's gone. And he's been removed for 6 months. And my oldest is 15, and he's spent probably 2 hours talking near him at dinner one time. That's it. Gone. Doesn't text, doesn't call. My son did ask him in June. He said, I'm doing really good at route running, footwork. Do you think we could do sports together or football? And he said, he texted him back and he said, yeah, we can do it sometime this week, even if it's at dark. And then he heard from him a month later. They don't really have a relationship with him. They miss his body when they see him and they know that's their father, but normal, they've never had normal. And
Yeah.
on top of that, the other thing that what set this whole thing happening in January of 23, he was arrested for driving and he had paraphernalia in the car. And at that point, it was my son's ADHD pills. And they're capsules that you can pop open and stuff's in them. And that was like the straw that like broke the camel's back is, and again, narcissism and fixing problems. I had a lawyer friend, we got it from a felony to a misdemeanor, and we gave them Riker's medicine and said that he was transporting the medicine to the school. And that's when it was open. And the lawyer, that's my friend, he's like, no, Erin, it was like an open capsule, like the medicine wasn't in it. And I thought, would he be taking our children, my child's ADHD pills? And he is. He was stealing our son's ADHD pills. And I was like, I can't even have freaking ADHD pills around the house. It's like, I don't want to chase the crazy merry-go-round anymore.
It's hard to be on here where I'm thinking, holy crap, it's going here. Like this conversation is going here. And it's not obviously gonna be like, oh, like hunky-dory, thing. This is the reality. I mean, the thing that I know that we can anchor to is God will work all things out for the good of those who love him. He knows us, he's hearing our prayers. He has helped us to be strong women of God that, I mean, man, like I think, and I always, I said this in my book that when you're married to an NFL athlete or a professional athlete, you have to be strong. Like you have to have, it's not like these women are weak women. So
Mm-mm.
I just look at you and I'm just thinking like, I had no idea. And you were not weak to endure like this whole time. You're like not, I mean, it's like this resilience and this hope to say, I'm gonna keep going, hoping that things will change. And so like, I mean, just as a friend, like you're strong. Like I look at you and I just think, gosh, you're like those women that the Bible talks about. And I don't think, let me say this, like, gosh, throughout the Bible, you'll see how influential women are. And I'm not like pumping us up or making us seem like we're both needed, or we're needed more than a man, but we're in this situation where we have to step it up and God gives us the strength to get us through. And so my heart obviously goes out to your boys. They go out to my boys, like all these things. And I just know God's going to take care of them. And doesn't mean they're not going to go through their stuff, but uh, I'm glad that they have you. And I'm glad that they have, I think you said that your brother, God, and that's my big prayer. When I think about my kids, Lord, bring godly influences to them, bring godly examples. That's just my prayer for my boys and my daughter.
God blessed me with amazing parents. Like, if I didn't have them, I look back at stuff, I'm surprised I have not had a mental breakdown. I've had several minor mental breakdowns and crying experiences and, gut wrenching crying experiences, but I know that I could leave that marriage. And I gave it my all. And, I just look at it as God didn't bring it together. And so that was Satan. And I endured it, to actually listen to Jesus. And when he tries to spare so many bad choices for us and not marrying equally yoked. And I mean, there's reasons for this. My kids are healthy. They have not, to my knowledge, partaken in anything horrific yet. Their father started smoking weed, I think at 14 or 15, and he hasn't stopped for 30 some years. At that point, I'm okay. Like the house is so much safer and more peaceful for them. They are thriving. They're gorgeous. So those things are all a blessing. And I've seen so many things that, yeah, people are like, oh, they need a father. They do need a father, but they don't need a toxic father. They have a lot of good coaches. My dad's amazing. And so they have great leaders near them that are men. So, whatever happens with their dad, and if he changes himself and things like that, that would be amazing for them. But otherwise, right now, the healthiest thing is what has happened, and so, we do just pray that for our children and pray over our kids that they will make, and having those conversations with your children. um I don't know how you were raised, but I feel like when I was in high school, my parents didn't have those hard conversations that they should have, and I'm
Mhm.
having them with my children, like blatant to the point where, like, there's no sugarcoating this. Here's what it is. And in the world, in the society where anything goes right now, I'm really having those conversations.
So good. I think it's like a generational thing because I know when I think about conversations with my mom, whether it's sex or something like that, it was like so uncomfortable and it was so, yeah, like, okay, how do I say this and that? And it was just like I learned from that. I'm thinking like, gosh, I wish we had deeper conversations. And yes, I want that with my kids because we forget, especially as Christians. I know how crazy I was, and I'm a completely different person. And I want them to know that mom didn't, I want them to know that I'm approachable. And so it means that I have to say, hey, I wasn't always like this, it's like I used to do these things. And so obviously age appropriate, those conversations they're hilarious for one, like when we talk about what I used to do or whatever, when they get old enough and mature enough. And when I say hilarious, I'm really just thinking of one in particular where, I was like telling him about my past. And he's like, Mom, you were a slut. Just like, he's like, you. And you have to know this kid because he's just a jokester. You ho. But we're having that fun thing, this conversation, but yet they're real. And it's this whole thing, like this other concept in terms of parenting is I have to remind myself, don't freak out. Don't freak out. Because if I freak out, it is going to make them think, oh, I cannot talk to her. And so as you're talking about these real conversations with the kids, like that's the reminder for me. You've been there, Eileen, you don't forget what you've gone through or what you've done. And look where you are now. So they are going to have their own journeys in their relationship with God and things like that. So gosh, like there's so many things. I definitely want to touch up on this really quick, and we won't talk about it because we may have this conversation outside of here at some point. But so you talk about like wanting to get remarried for sure. Like I know for me, I've had to that place of being the basically the wife and the husband. It
Mhm.
is for sure. I know still that there's some major healing that I have to do being married again. Remarriage, marriage is hard. I would say that remarriage is like harder because of the different triggers, the different wounds, the different like mama bear, like how, and so anyways, yeah, I maybe they may have to cut this off, but it is a challenge to go. Like I've been masculine and feminine. And so now my challenge is to bring down that masculine piece and stay feminine. And so it's definitely hard. And so I just, I'm just thinking about like, you still have that desire and like how it's going to look. And, there's such dynamics with, like a step parent coming in when the kids are adults, when the kids are in their teens, when the kids are young. So I see phases of obviously with my husband, the relationship with the younger ones, it's different than the ones in the middle and the ones that are older. Like it's just, yeah, it's for sure a journey. And so also for you in warning, because you're warning the younger ones, I'm thinking like for you, like it's definitely things to think about as you're, thinking about potential mates and things like that. Well, okay, let me ask you this. Has there been any interest? Has anybody pursued you or anything like that? Or is it just, are you in this place where you're like, I don't even have time?
Talking like, oh, I'm getting married. I've never had normal. I've never known normal. I've never known, like, I loved him unconditionally. He was a narcissist that basically used me for everything that he could get. I mean, I took care of him like a child. I watched my mom and dad's love, and I totally hope God blesses me with that. I want someone to know where my freckles are. I want someone to see me. I had never got flowers for Valentine's Day. I never got cards for birthdays. If we did something, it's because I set everything up. Like, I did not exist. My needs were never met. Like, if I wanted something, I did it for myself. My entire 18 years was, how can I help you? And so, yes, I do want so badly to be loved unconditionally and have what I watched my life through my parents and
Yeah.
and they still love on each other all the time. And so I long for that because my life's half over. If you look at, like, we're, in our 40s, and, the average person is like, I think 80. And so, yeah, I definitely want that for myself. And I think I deserve it
Mhm.
after all of that. And so, yes, dating, no, I have, like, my feelings with that is I took care of someone for so long that it's like I'm trying to take care of myself right now because I do not want to ever ignore the red flags. I don't want to settle. I want someone that prays with my children, that prays for me. And I will not do what I did for another 18 years. I would rather be alone. I love my dogs and I'll sleep with them at night. I don't need, I would love for God to bless me with that opportunity, hopefully one day.
Yeah, but like, I mean, only God can see the future, but man, he's so taking care of you. And I'm glad to hear that place of peace right now. And so I will leave it at that. But Erin, like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I knew it was gonna be a hard conversation, but thank you for bringing it there to I know I was almost close to tears. I know that people are going to hear this and I hope that it is a warning sign. I hope that you definitely are going to be helping women like right in the thick of it right now to go, you know what? Enough is enough. And see, I'm not saying, and I know you didn't say this, it's not about, okay, let's divorce, but there has to be places of challenging the situation. It
I just
could be legal separation, it could be something before that, but you can't expect different results if you are doing the same thing. So there has to be a shift of something.
I would say that just so many people don't understand, what like, it'll be like, well, what did he do? What's a narcissistic example? And to me, so I had just had Riker, and Riker was 2 weeks old, and at this point Ryan had a job and he was selling vehicles, and he had I had two children and I had a 2 week old. He had set up a weekend getaway to go meet with a woman he had sold a car to like 6 weeks prior. So he talked to her for 6 weeks, and he was going to like Spirit Lake, Iowa to meet this woman. And I had a 2 week old, and I'm like breastfeeding and I'm thinking about a baby. I'm not thinking about anything else. And he's telling me, like, I want to go hunting. And I think, oh my gosh, he never does anything for himself because he always says he can't because of me. So I should let him go hunting, like just manipulation at that point. And so I'm like, he should go hunting. I'll do the baby. I'm just, with the newborn, and I'm in this moment and I'm whatever. So my mother is like looking it up, and she's like, honey, there's no hunting seasons in Iowa in January. And I went, what? She's like, yeah, so he's hunting. I was like, yeah, he was cleaning out his guns. And so I go through his phone and I'm like, I see this text message feed, and I call the woman and she's like, oh my gosh, I thought something was off with him. I just got divorced and have 2 kids. He told me he was divorced with 2 kids. Meanwhile, he's married, 2 kids, third brand new baby, 2 weeks old, so 3 kids. And she's like, you need to get out of it. So I confront him. And during this narcissistic pattern, he's like, well, you were pregnant and you had been focusing on the baby. And so the whole time I felt this responsibility that I neglected him, the way he manipulated it, that I wasn't focused on him because I was pregnant. And if I had just spent more time with him, he wouldn't have went to someone else. That is narcissism to a T, and it worked. I felt bad. I felt guilty for neglecting him when he tried to cheat on me. And there's so many examples of that in my marriage, that women are women narcissists too. But when a man's doing that and people don't really see it, like I just didn't see it because I was postpartum, had a baby. You don't want to get divorced when you just had a 2-week-old and do all that. I mean, there were so many of the same stories in my marriage that I could give over and over. And people, to me, can watch and look up a definition of a narcissist and understand it. But until they have examples like what I just told you, they don't get it. And you have to be, and then at that point, they're like, oh, mine did something similar. That is not healthy. And they are mentally abusing you. So to me, I think just getting out examples and clarification to young girls when they're, getting cheated on or whatever it is, like they need to see that these things are not going to change. They're going to get worse.
You talked about writing that book someday. There's got to be something. Someone has to write a book of red flags. It's probably out there, but that would definitely be something that when you have the time, and I know that you're all about the kids and just living, but Erin, thank you again, so much for just being real. You're as beautiful as ever.
I'm here for you if you ever need me.
I love you, girl.
I love you.
Until next time, love well, celebrate your strength, and discover the new things you are capable of. You are a light in the lives of those around you, and no night is too dark for you to find your way.